Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the Wisden Women's Cricket Weekly Podcast in association with Metro Bank. We're really excited to get this off the ground. Over 2024, we'll be covering the biggest stories in the women's game, as well as shining a light on the tales that maybe don't get the attention that they deserve. Every week, myself, award-winning journalist Katya Witney, and England World Cup winner Lauren Winfield-Hill will be hitting your feeds a couple of days or so after the weekly show does. We're really excited that our headline partner for the show will be Metro Bank. Metro Bank is the first ever champion partner of women's and girls cricket. And this year, together with the ECB, they are launching the Metro Bank Girls in Cricket Fund with the ambition of tripling the number of girls cricket teams by the end of 2026. We know cricket can boost confidence and allow women and girls to develop skills that will stick with them for life. Metro Bank want to provide more chances for women and girls to thrive in their community and to create more positive role models. So through the Girls in Cricket Fund, they'll be focusing on recruiting, educating, supporting and celebrating the people that make girls cricket in clubs happen. To get involved, head to metrobankonline.co.uk/cricket, where you can discover more about the Metro Bank Girls in Cricket Fund and help to champion the future of girls cricket. Without further ado, let's kick things off with our first interview on the show with none other than England captain Heather Knight about her 8 years in the job. I'm Yaz Rana, and with me today is my co-host Lauren Winfield-Hill, who we're really excited to have with us on this journey, and the England captain Heather Knight. Heather, great to have you with us this early morning. How are you feeling about being interviewed by one of your teammates? Are you worried that Lauren might lift the lid on what it's really like under your leadership?
No, thanks for having me, guys. I'm honoured to be the first guest on the first podcast. And me and Lozzie go way back, so we've probably got a bit of dirt on each other. So we'll have to make a little pact not to give away too much.
Lauren, you were part of the England team for Heather's first series as captain all the way back in 2016. What was it like at the time? It was a huge moment for English cricket. Charlotte Edwards, arguably the biggest name in English women's cricket at the time, moving away from the job so close to World Cup. What was that actually like in the dressing room at the time?
Yeah, I think it felt like it was a real changing of the guard. So obviously there was change within the playing group and in the sort of how the team made up, and obviously a big change in leadership. I always say, like, one of Hev's biggest strengths probably that she doesn't actually give that much away. So although it was like a massive moment, obviously a home series, to sort of kick things off under her reign, everybody was just really excited that it sort of felt like a new chapter. I'd love to know a little bit more about how Hev was actually feeling, taking over from such a legend and such a legacy under Charlotte Edwards. Like I said, she doesn't give much away, and that's almost her biggest strength. But I'd love to know, Hev, how you sort of how you were feeling in that first series, and obviously been named England captain.
Yeah, well, I found out a little bit before the girls did. So Robbie told me a couple of weeks before, just to give me a chance to get my head around it really and have a think about how I wanted to do things. It came as like, I kind of knew being vice captain, I was probably in the running and stuff, but it did come a little bit of a surprise at the time. But yeah, I was excited. I was nervous as well. I was losing sleep over whether to have a mid-wicket for Jenny Gunn, and I was like, what am I doing? This is nuts. I found it weird, sort of the change in how people look at you when you become captain, because obviously you suddenly overnight have a bigger role in decisions around selection and things like that, and you're more of a central figure. I remember we had some appearance somewhere, and I usually like to be at the back and on the end in photos, and someone grabbed me like, oh no, you're in the middle, and I was like, that was when it was hit me. I was like, oh okay, this is a bit different. I have to be kind of front and center, which probably isn't, as you know, Lozzie, my natural way to be. I like to sort of work away in the background and not be in the limelight, so to speak. So yeah, that was a bit of okay, this is a bit different. And then I guess being a year out from a World Cup as well, that was obviously a huge thing on the horizon. So yeah, I guess, plot the path towards that and get the team ready. And I remember a lot of noise from outside the group as well, in the media, around obviously Lottie being tapped on the shoulder and things. But actually, it felt reasonably calm in the group. I think everyone sort of realised this was a real opportunity to kind of stake the claim. We changed up the batting order in the team quite a lot. So it was really cool to be involved in, but also there was certainly a bit of apprehension about how it would go, I guess, from me.
Yeah, well, that's exactly Yaz's point with this podcast. Have you spend so much time spent, talking about the women's game, talking about other people, you got interviews all the time. So that's why we wanted to delve into Heather Knight and put you at the center of it. So I don't think you're getting away with that and hide it at the back again. But I'm just interested, like obviously growing up, we did like the whole junior super fours thing, which is sort of like the age group. I don't know, the best sort of 40, 50 players in the country coming together and playing against each other. And I remember you sort of being a leader in that space, even back then at that age. When you took over the captaincy, did you have a bit of a leadership identity? Did you know how you sort of wanted to go about things, or was, had you paid any thought to that, or was it sort of learning on the job?
Well, I guess I was pretty young, so I was 25. Like some of it was learning on the job, to be honest. Like I'd had some experience around super fours and things like that, and county stuff, which I really enjoyed. I always enjoyed the responsibility of it. I enjoyed the on-field stuff, but when you're captain at like super fours, you don't do a lot of the off-field stuff. So I guess it was learning on the job, definitely, with those kind of things. Probably didn't realise how much a captain does, an England captain does, until you kind of get the job. So yeah, it was certainly sort of working out my style quite quickly. Tried to be myself, I think. Like I think that was really important. Like I was there because of who I was and kind of how I went about things, I guess. So certainly tried to not change too much, and that's been something I've always tried to have through my career, not changing too much despite what happens, and being pretty level. And yeah, working alongside Robbo about how we wanted the team to play, it was really important that I kind of modelled that, and I wanted to sort of be at the forefront of this new team and how I played and how I went about things. But yeah, it certainly took me a bit of time to work out how I wanted to be as a captain. And probably at the start of my captaincy, I was too worried about trying to please people and trying to keep everyone happy, and you just can't do that sometimes. As captain, it doesn't really work. You've got to sort of make hard decisions all the time, and people sometimes are going to be disappointed. So yeah, I learned that quite quick.
How did you want your team to play, out of interest? Because I was looking up what people were saying when you were appointed captain, and I found Mark Robinson's words particularly interesting. He actually said, when you were unveiled, the next World Cup could be too soon for this team. It obviously wasn't. So what happened in that year? Was there anything in particular you wanted to do in terms of how the team played, etc.?
Yeah, I think that was Mark probably trying to take the pressure off us, and trying to, more for the group, I think, than externally, try and sort of accept that we're a new team and trying to get us to play with a little bit of freedom. And I remember, well, my first game as captain, we watched it rain all day up at Leicester, and had to wait another night and then play the next day, which was really strange. But I think we wanted to take the game on, I think, and I guess early in my captaincy, Lozzie, you were a huge part of that game at Worcester, where we smashed the record score against Pakistan, and you and Tammy got hundreds, and that was kind of the blueprint of how we wanted to do things, like breaking records, pushing the game forward. A lot of the chat around when you start a new campaign is always the same. You want to entertain, inspire, take things forward, be aggressive. It's the same in pretty much every dressing room you play in every franchise competition, but sort of living it out is really important. I think we really did it that day, and I think that was the day at Worcester that everyone believed that we were going to be a really good team, and we were going to play really exciting cricket and really aggressive cricket as well. Lozzie got a very fine time that day.
Many moons ago. It's interesting, actually. I think, with the leadership stuff and talking about trying to model those behaviours, that style of play, do you think that that's probably stretched your game a little bit away from what you would have maybe naturally reverted to, because you're obviously trying to be at the forefront of this brand of cricket? Like I certainly felt at the time was like there was a real shift in sort of being more aggressive, opening up areas of your game that maybe would have built into your innings. Do you think that sort of, like you say, like stretched you to play that way and really model those sorts of, that style of play, I guess?
Yeah, during that series, I remember batting, and I remember thinking, like, what are my options here? What shots am I going to play? And I was like, oh, I want the team to play like this, right? I've got to play like this. And I was like, right, I'm going to come down and boom it over extra cover. So yeah, I was literally thinking it in my innings and things like that. And I feel like my T20 games had to evolve quite a lot. It's probably hasn't been the most like natural, particularly growing up. Like T20 wasn't as natural to me. Probably 50 over was kind of my comfort zone a little bit more. So yeah, I've had to evolve my T20 game and be more aggressive and find different options as I progressed through my career. And probably at that point, I'd just found my place in the T20 team, like being sort of an all-rounder, batting a little bit lower. So yeah, certainly had to kind of model how I wanted the team to play and keep evolving that. And like for me, I always want the team to get better and keep learning and keep improving. So that's a big part of what I wanted to model for the girls as well.
Hearing you talk about becoming captain at such a young age, it sort of made me think, I think being England captain has the potential of being quite a lonely job because so few other people have the experience of doing it. And of those other people, you want to do it slightly differently to them, and your dynamic changes with the people you're playing with. Out of interest, do you talk about your captaincy with people outside the team? Is it something you talk about with other people? And have you found it lonely at times?
Yeah, I think all leadership can be lonely, like particularly like captaincy, because in cricket, because there's always a bit of water between you and the team. I guess I guess how it has to be sometimes because of I guess the decisions that you make and the influence you have on selection and roles on the pitch. So yeah, it certainly can be lonely. There's no doubt about that. And I think trying to find people outside the group and coaches leaning on them a little bit to kind of have a time to vent and time to release a bit of pressure and chat through things, I think is quite important. And as Lottie said earlier, I'm probably not the best at giving stuff away, so that's a massive strength as well. But sometimes it can be a weakness in terms of keep stuff to myself a little bit. And it's certainly something I've been a lot more open, I think, probably in the last couple of years, particularly around the group and seeing the benefit of that and the benefit of evolving. But yeah, it certainly can be lonely. And you sometimes make wrong decisions that you don't quite get right, and you kind of have to own those and have the responsibility of that, I guess. But I've always enjoyed the responsibility of that. And I think the hardest thing is when you're not scoring any runs. Like that's the worst place to be. And I've always, as I said earlier, prided myself on being quite level, but that can be when it's really tough, when things aren't going well. And you also have to segregate your batting with your captaincy a little bit. I found that tough at the start of my leadership, I guess, because you're thinking about a team perspective and actually you need to focus on being a player as well, because you function at your best when you're performing as a player, and when you're scoring runs, it's a lot easier to captain. So I sort of had to be quite strict, I think, with when I had my time as a batter. Like I sometimes find I was having conversations about the team when I was doing my batting session, and I had to say to some coaches, look, I need to sort of be head of the batter now, and we'll have a coffee or a chat afterwards.
Have you had any sort of mentors or sort of people that you've really lent on and mentored your leadership, or has it like you say just been more conversations with coaches or people outside the game? Has there been anybody like in particular that you've lent on?
Yeah, more just conversational really. Like Robbo was great for me at the start of my career. He kind of guided me through and we worked really well as a team, I think. Ali Maiden as well as assistant coach. Like me and Ali are quite different personalities, and we thought quite differently, but we had a really trusting relationship. So to be able to kind of bounce ideas off and see how different people thought, was certainly really handy for me. And I think little conversations and like looking outside of cricket sometimes as well, like not necessarily speaking to people, but looking how other leaders in different sports go about things. Like I like reading about leadership and like seeing how other captains and leaders in different walks of life do things and listen to podcasts and stuff like that. But yeah, I think realizing that everyone's a different leader quite early is important, and being authentic to that is so key to people following you, I guess, because a lot of people see through if you're not attentive, if you're not yourself.
Out of interest, who are the non-cricket sporting leaders that you look to?
Good question. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Like Angela, this sounds like really boring, but like Angela Merkel, like kind of how she's done stuff for Germany. Yeah, just the sort of no fuss people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Do you know who that is, Lozzie?
No, I'm looking through
No.
heads here. I'm like, who are these people? I was thinking,
sorry, they're just people that popped into my head.
like the hockey team or something like that. No, we did a bit of work.
Oh yeah, Kate Richardson. Well,
yeah. That was someone that I thought of a little bit.
I find that fascinating, Heather, because those are not answers I think many cricketers would give.
Hence the look up, the blank look on my face.
I'm trying to make myself sound intelligent here, aren't I? Got to pick some world leaders, I guess.
I was going to say I did not expect an Angela Merkel reference on the first podcast. But yeah, do you think having that sort of non-cricket perspective has helped you over the years? Because yeah, as I say, very few cricketers would name Angela Merkel as a leadership icon.
Well, I'm reading a book on Germany at the moment, so that kind of why it's fresh in my head. And I was trying to think of female non-sport leaders, and she sort of just popped in. Yeah, I think so. Like, balance for me is so important to who I am, and I've never wanted cricket just to be my sole identity. I've always wanted to have stuff outside of cricket, and all my choices, like where I went to uni, things that I did, were all based on trying to have a bit of balance in life. And yeah, I think it's really important, particularly now, like excuse me, younger players come in and cricket's so intense and so full on, and can sort of rule your life a little bit. So yeah, balance for me is really important. It's actually made me a better cricketer, I think, because having stuff outside of cricket is what I really value, and actually makes me more present and more rounded, I guess, as an individual, to be better as a leader and as a cricketer.
I just want to go back a little bit, Hev, with talking in the last few years about being a little bit more open and vulnerable and around the group, and you found real benefit in that. What sort of sparked that? Do you think dressing rooms changed over the years in terms of the environments? Do you think it was something that was an influence from a coach, or what sort of sparked that change? Because I like obviously being in and out of the dressing room and seeing that evolution. It's, you know, like leadership is a skill and you're evolving and you're trying new things, aren't you? It's like anything. But I'm interested to know sort of what was the change and why.
Yeah, I guess the group grows up a little bit. Like a lot of people that kind of were quite young when I was a young captain are now like senior players. They want to have more of an impact, and I think I got told a good bit of advice that I've kind of took on. I guess you have to be the captain that the team needs. So your job is as a leader and as a captain is to evolve and shift to try and get the best out of your group. Yeah, and that kind of stuck with me, I guess. And yeah, being able to adapt and change is important. And I got a bit of feedback from one of the senior players, like probably about a year ago as well, around wanting to have more impact and feel a little bit more valued. And that was quite powerful, actually. I was really grateful to get that feedback and feel like that was a big like shift in trying to be more open and use those senior girls a little bit more. Probably developed more of a strategy group for some of the girls that kind of I use a little bit more in the field. And yeah, so it's kind of like twofold, to also to help me have a little bit more help on the field, but also for some of those girls to feel like they have a little bit more role and a little bit more leadership roles on the field.
Do you think that sort of is almost taken the weight off it a little bit for you as well, like in terms of, you know, like the isolated bit? It can be a lonely place. I guess it's more of a collaborative approach over the last few years. Do you think that's sort of, I guess not, I don't want to call it a burden, but like lessened the weight of it a little bit?
Yeah, I guess I've enjoyed it more. I think what probably has done on the field is given me a bit more space to have the real key conversations with bowlers. So like making sure that I'm obviously looking at the whole game, but like little jobs for like Nat and aiming behind the stumps, like making sure that the angles are right, and that kind of leadership group having that sort of role to make sure they're thinking about what's going on has freed up me to have those more sort of clear conversations with bowlers, and that's the stuff that I love doing, like having those conversations in the pressure moments. And yeah, really being able to have the time to chat to your bowlers, because they're the ones that make you look like a good captain. So yeah, they're the important ones in your life for sure. So yeah, it's certainly been a good shift, I think, for the group as well, in terms of like everyone makes sure they're reading the game a little bit more and having a few more leaders on the pitch.
How different is the job now? Because I was looking at the squad in your first year leading up to the World Cup. It was quite similar profile in terms of ages. So I think Sophie Eccleston was the only player under the age of 23 to play in the year leading up to the World Cup. In the last year, there have been 8 players who've been aged 22 or under who've played under your leadership. What challenges does that different age profile of squad bring, and working with so many young players in quite a short period of time?
Yeah, massively. And it's exciting because as a captain, when you have a young player, you feel like you can make a big impact in the start of that player's career, which is, yeah, something that really excites me, and I love doing that and seeing those younger players come in and how they go. Younger players are different now, I think. There's a lot more on their plate. There's a lot more scrutiny, social media. Some of them probably care a little bit more about what people think, and I guess it's a different world for younger players having grown up with that a little bit as well. But also they want to be included. They want to voice their opinions and things like that, and want to feel like they're in charge of their own destiny, I guess. So I guess younger players coming through, I don't know if you feel the same at younger players at Yorkshire and things like that, or the Diamonds, but yeah, it's a different set of skills, I think, that you need as a leader to get the best out of them. And yeah, there certainly is like more scrutiny. They come to stuff more, well, younger, they have things younger, they get a little bit more reward younger, but also they don't have, I guess, the grounding sometimes in like going to uni and living a normal life, and purely because there's a lot more cricket now, and it's very hard to do the other alongside that. So quite an exciting thing that I've enjoyed, like flexing my style to try and get the best out of those younger players. And younger players like are exciting, but they also need patience as well, and they need guidance, and they need chances to go out and fail and learn because of that. So yeah, I've enjoyed it.
How much I was thinking about this actually, and just we're not going down the whole Heather Knight talks about the landscape of women's cricket, but it's interesting because sort of back 2016, 2017, the amount of time that we spent together as a team, and you know, that a lot of the time was just Team England, and that, you know, you didn't go off and play for various other teams around, you know, like New Zealand was a prime example where you've got players flying in from the WPL to join the group. How much harder is it to sort of get to know players, build relationships, when I guess the dynamic in the landscape has changed in terms of just the volume of time that like we used to spend together as a group and all year round? And obviously that's changed a little bit now, where you've got people coming in at various times, been playing in various different comps, and it's sort of, you know, it's a constantly moving ship, really.
Yeah, there's certainly different options for players. There's different drivers and things pulling people in different directions. But I guess I've always wanted, when people come back to England now, to really enjoy it and to really it feel like home, and feel like their team and a place they can like really enjoy their cricket and really enjoy being part of this group. So I think that's important. But yeah, even just like in T20 and 50 over squads, it used to be very similar, but now you've got like 4 or 5 different players coming in and out, and sort of managing that is a bit trickier. Like it's harder for the players, and probably a little bit harder to manage at times. And I guess the WPL stuff, that was a brand new situation. Like some of your best players coming in halfway through a tour. Yeah, so the landscape has changed hugely. But I think making sure that England environment is really strong, and we do still spend a lot of time together. Like the amount of cricket now is pretty mad. So yeah, particularly those younger players coming in, I feel like I want to get to know them well as well, because that's a way that I can manage them better if I know them a little bit better off the pitch as well.
You've obviously worked with different coaches. What's that been like, sort of evolving your own leadership style depending on who you're working with closely? When Laura and I were talking yesterday, she was talking about how England have been more aggressive under John Lewis, and is that something that comes naturally to you in evolving with different leadership styles and different leadership philosophies?
Yeah, I think one of my strengths is probably adapting to working with different people, and I've God, how many coaches have I had now? I've had a few, haven't I?
Well,
Yeah,
I'll say it's three, isn't it? Is it three? Is three as captain? Is that right?
So
Robbo.
Robbo, Lisa, and then Louis. Yeah, so three. So yeah, it's a really key relationship. Like, it's certainly someone you spend a lot of time with. You spend a lot of time on the phone to those people, and time sort of plotting things and making decisions. So it's really key to make those relationships. And I guess with Robbo, kind of, he was there before I was captain, so he obviously was the one that was made me captain. So it felt like probably a slightly different dynamic to when Lisa came in, and she's also a very laid back coach as well, and wanted me to take more of a key role in things, and lead a lot more around talks and meetings and things like that. So yeah, that was slightly different. And then yeah, John came in and challenged me to be a better captain as well, which is something, as a person, that I need. Challenge is really good for me, good for me as a cricketer. Like, when I'm not challenged, I can get a little bit bored and drift and stuff. So yeah, that was quite good to kind of have someone come in when I've been captain for a long time, and kind of challenge how I did things, and challenge me to evolve a little bit, which we touched on earlier. I enjoy it, and I guess my style doesn't change too much, hopefully. There's little sort of tweaks you're trying to make when obviously you and the coach have got a vision about where you want the team to go, and that often changes when a different coach comes in. So yeah, little tweaks, but hopefully generally my leadership hasn't changed too much.
How do you reflect? I'm going to ask you about Australia, basically. You know, Australia have been one of the most dominant sporting teams in the world. What's it been like having them as the benchmark that, you know, English cricket, men's or women's, has always been compared to what's going on in Australia? What's it been like competing against them and having that benchmark that you're always compared to, when they've been such an extraordinary sporting success over such a long period of time?
Oh, bloody annoying. To be honest, like, always compared to the Australians, and seeing them do well. Yeah, I guess frustrating. I feel like at times we've competed with them, but at times we haven't played our best cricket against them. And I guess sometimes it's probably felt like there's, not recently, but it felt like at times previously there's been like a bit of a mental taboo about them, and a feeling that they're invincible and they're robots. And I think we tried to kid ourselves sometimes that they're robots and a bit boring, and we have more fun, even though they're really successful, which is, yeah, just, I think, a narrative you tell yourself sometimes. But yeah, I do think that's really shifted, particularly in how we did things in the Ashes last year. Like, we felt like we had to do things a bit different, be the disruptors almost, and kind of have that inner confidence and swagger that we were good enough to beat them. And I think actually that game we played at Edgbaston that we lost, that was really close, and it sounds weird because we lost, but like, that was the kind of game that a lot of the girls believed we could beat them, I think, and that was quite a big mental shift. And then we went on to the Oval, and obviously went on that massive run of winning games and bringing ourselves back into the series. So yeah, it's been a little bit annoying. Like, their depth has been quite frustrating. Like, they've obviously had that professional structure in place for a long time, and the players that they bring in seem to be ready to perform. And we've probably only started to have that the last couple of years, obviously, with the professional structure now being proper.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how, obviously, just coming back from playing over in Oz, and how much the whole structure and everything in women's cricket does feel like it's very much going toe to toe with the Australians now. How much confidence does that give you, obviously, going into the winter? Because it did feel like a real shift. It felt like there was big punches thrown, and results aside, it felt like, you know, that especially in the white ball stuff, that the cricket that was played was, you know, was awesome. And it felt like at times the Aussies were massively rattled. How much confidence does that give you and the group, obviously looking ahead to the winter? And I don't know, like, even talking about it, it feels like exciting.
Yeah, it does. And like, having played in Australia in the WBBL in October as well, I've seen the Aussies try and change their game a little bit and try a few new things because of kind of how the English summer last year went. So yeah, we've talked about that, and it being really important that we keep moving our game forward as well, because they're going to try and do the same as our other teams around the world. So yeah, that's really exciting. And obviously T20 World Cup coming up in in Bangladesh. That's a key thing on our horizon, and something we're obviously targeting that we can try and be successful in. It's exciting time to be an England cricketer. There's so much cricket. Like sometimes you don't have a time to kind of sit back and either look back at kind of the tour or look forward and be excited, because you're kind of on the next thing on the treadmill a little bit. I've tried to use the last couple of weeks to kind of have a bit of a break and then look forward to what's going to be a pretty cool year. Obviously the Ashes coming up in under a year's time away in Australia as well. That's going to be pretty cool. And now the summer's getting going, like it's bringing back memories of last year, like how special that Ashes series was, like the support we had, the kind of goodwill feeling around cricket, the good vibe around cricket all over the country. So hopefully we'll get a few more bums on seats this year and people like coming to watch us.
How proud are you of how you went about it in the Ashes? You know, winning both white ball series, coming so close in the Test match. Did you say England almost had this taboo about Australia, and getting over it in front of those packed crowds with a slightly younger squad? That felt like a really, really significant series.
Yeah, it did. And like that Test match, we were in an awesome position. We were in a position to win it, and just had a couple of bad sessions probably throughout the 5 days that lost it for us. But I think the fact that we kept the belief after that as well was quite important, because like there'd been times in series gone by where we'd lost close games that we maybe could have got over the line in, and we'd kind of then lost again and faltered. It didn't really feel like we did that. And me and John spoke after that Edgbaston game, and we were really like confident that we were going toe to toe with them. And I think it was really important that the group kind of took that on and really felt that. I'm just proud of the way the girls went about it. The sort of fight we had and the way we functioned as a group, I think we were pretty honest and pretty open throughout that series around like how we want to do things, how we're feeling, what was going on, like managing the pressure of big crowds and kind of having everyone behind you, which also is great, but also brings an added pressure. So I just certainly look back on that series with massive fondness, but like a tinge of regret as well, because like you're so close to pulling off the most awesome comeback. So it was great, but it would have been really nice to win that game at Southampton and obviously had the ultimate comeback.
How do you go about? I just want to know a little bit, like, it's obviously, you know, in terms of keeping morale up after results and outcomes, I guess. How do you actually go about that sort of on the shop floor, in terms of, you know, dissecting points of the game, or, you know, into just keeping morale up? It's obviously easy to just say, you know, never mind, like we've got games to look forward to. But how do you actually maintain that confidence in the group during that Ashes, when, you know, the test didn't go the way in which you'd hoped at the start? Like what happens behind the scenes to ensure that confidence is maintained?
I think being clear on sticking to how you want to play things. I think that was probably big for us in the Ashes. Like we tried to take results out of it a little bit. Like obviously everyone knows you want to win, you're desperate to win, but trying to focus on entertaining and inspiring the people that are coming to watch us is a nice way to kind of not focus on the results. So you can't sort of give that message and then be like, oh, we've lost 2 games, like this is shit. Excuse my language, this is rubbish. So being really clear on how you want to do things, debriefing them really honestly. Like in that Test match, I think we just got ahead of ourselves a little bit. Like we kind of quickly got those wickets, and then suddenly we were like, oh, we can win this. Like, and the psychology changed a little bit, and we're thinking too much about winning the game rather than doing what we had to do in each little block of the game to get ourselves in a position to win it. So that Test match actually was quite a good thing to refer back to throughout the series. Like if we started to get ahead of ourselves, like making sure we were sort of seeing the threat and pulling ourselves back into living in the moment a little bit and concentrating on what we had to do for the team in that moment. And just having a bit of fun as well. Lovely, like getting on the golf course. Like we're a group that likes hanging out with each other and enjoys spending time off the pitch. So just keeping morale up that way. And it was hard not to enjoy it as well when so many people were invested in what we were doing. And you're at home, you've got families around, friends, partners, etc. So trying to enjoy what you do is important too.
What's next for Heather Knight after playing is over? Obviously that's could still be quite a long way away. But this week it was announced that you're going to join the Somerset board, which sounds like quite a serious thing. Do you have any idea of what you want to do? I mean, if you're reading books about Angela Merkel, etc., you know, what sort of stuff post cricket are you considering, or is that even something you're thinking about?
Certainly not politics, because that's the route that you're going down there. That's for sure. But yeah, I guess like doing a few bits and bobs outside of cricket as well. Like we were joking about the van earlier, Lozzie, but traveling in a van to Europe is definitely something I want to do. Coaching, maybe a little bit of like business side of sport and administration stuff.
And in terms of like, obviously that's post playing. What's left to tick off? It's obviously been a long and successful reign. No, but you took over at a young age, thrown right into the mixer of the cricket vortex and captaincy and stuff. But what do you have? Are you a goal setter? Are you just a series by series kind of girl? What sort of left with big drivers for you to tick off and know that whenever that might be, okay, I've left it in a good place?
Yeah, to be honest, Lozzie, like I've tried not to look too far ahead, because I probably did that at the World Cup in 2022. I was thinking this could be my last 50 over World Cup. I want to make the most of it. I want to perform really well. I want to obviously leave an imprint, and that kind of didn't help me as a cricketer, really. Like obviously there's COVID going on, and that was quite tricky to manage as well. But like it didn't really help me to look too far ahead. I think this might be the last of this, last of that. So probably post that, I've made a real conscious effort to try and stay like in the moment, stay present, and enjoy the series that I'm in, and not look hugely ahead. With the Ashes last year, I said there was a tinge of regret it being a draw and us not kind of doing that. And we've got an Ashes series away, which is going to be even harder to be successful out there. But yeah, I'd love to be involved in that series for sure, and build on the amazing stuff that we did last summer. So yeah, I've kind of sat on the fence and worked around your answer a little bit, as is my way sometimes. But yeah, trying to enjoy what I do for as long as possible, and not look too far ahead, because I don't think it actually is very helpful for me.
Cool. That feels like as good a place as any to wrap things up. Heather, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it, and best of luck with everything to come this summer and beyond.
Nice one. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Hev.
It's been a busy week in the English game. There was an amazing round of Rachael Heyhoe Flint Trophy games yesterday. According to the brilliant women's cricket stats compiler Hypocourse on Twitter, 2,164 runs were scored across the 4 games yesterday, the most ever in a single round of games. The victory margins yesterday were 3 runs, 3 wickets, 4 wickets, and 3 wickets. Katya, as we said the other day on the weekly show, the excellent streaming numbers also reflect the quality of cricket that's being played. And the Diamonds in particular have had a hell of a week, winning by 1 run on Saturday and then winning by 3 runs on Wednesday.
Yeah, so within the space of 4 days, they've had a 1-run win and a 3-run win. So that 1-run win against Central Sparks had a fantastic finish. Central Sparks were 9 wickets down, and then Grace Potts was run out off the last ball going for the second. So that was an incredible finish. And then 4 days later, there was another incredible finish when Southeast Stars were again like 9 wickets down, and Bethan Miles, was out off the last ball of the game, trying to hit a 4. So yeah, it was an incredible finish. And just across the board, so not just the last week, over the last couple of weeks of the Rachael Heyhoe Flint Trophy, there's been some really, really close results. So I think a third of the games have been won by 8 runs or less in the last 2 weeks. That's 16 games, and 5 of them have been won by 3 wickets or less. And the ones that have been won by more than 3 wickets have been like 4 wickets or 5 wickets. So there's been some incredibly close games. And the amount of runs that have been scored that you mentioned, they've actually been quite high scoring games. So looking at that, Northern Diamonds won yesterday, so the one they won by 3 runs. No one in the North, so the Northern Diamonds posted 311 batting first, and the highest score in their innings was 66. So it struck me as like a really kind of everyone chipping in performance, getting up to that big score, when normally, especially in women's regional cricket in the past, you've seen it's been 1 or 2 really big performances when sides have crossed that 300 barrier. But the exciting thing is now that that's almost becoming 250 plus as a standard, which is really, really exciting. And just the names as well playing in that game. You had Lauren Winfield-Hill, obviously, Holly Armitage just come back from New Zealand, Bess Heath, Stea Callis, Tash Farron, Alice Davidson-Richards, Sophia Dunkley, all of these incredible names playing in this kind of concentration of competition. And like we were talking about with the streaming numbers, when you switch on those streams that are free and you see that concentration of players who have international caps or hold these incredible records in international cricket, it's quite an incredible thing. You just switch that on and turn it on free and see that kind of closeness of results as well.
And we're making the point as well that, you know, a benefit that the women's game has at the moment is its regional structure is more concentrated from a talent point of view. So if a casual cricket fan who maybe, let's say, got into cricket through the 100 turns on a Rachael Heyhoe Flint stream, they are likely to know quite a few more players than if they turn on a random county stream in the men's stuff. And I think that's reflected in the numbers. You know, the numbers at the end of the Thunder had a really close game against the Blaze on the weekend, and the numbers on that stream were much higher than most counties will get for the majority of the season. We also had a set of England squads unveiled for the upcoming series against Pakistan, the first of which starts on Saturday. Headline news is that Sophia Dunkley is out of both squads and Tammy Beaumont is only in the ODI squad. Maya Bouchier, who had an outstanding tour of New Zealand, is likely to get an extended run at the top of the order in the T20Is. Katya, what's next for Dunkley? She's 25 and she's played 92 times for England. So England have really invested in her, and she's not quite taken the leap that I think people probably expected. She had a difficult year last year. We've talked about it before. There's almost this gap in age between players in their 30s now and the generation below them of a group, you know, and a generation of players who basically haven't become England batters. There aren't any players in the England team in their late 20s who've established themselves as batters, for example. What do you think is next for Dunkley?
I think it's important to say that the door doesn't feel like it's been slammed shut for Dunkley. That John Lewis made the point in the squad announcement that the reason she's not in the squad of players rather than even if she's not in the 11 is because they don't want to carry around spare batters around the country when they could be playing regional cricket or later in the summer playing 100 cricket. And when you look at Dunkley's domestic numbers, even when she's been struggling for England, her domestic numbers have been good. She was in the top 5 run scorers in the 100 last year. I think the issue with that is, and why people don't think about it as much, is because Tammy Beaumont was so good in the 100 last year, and Maya Bouchier also had a really, really good domestic summer last year. So England have got this kind of glut of top order batters, if you want, and everyone wants to bat at the top in T20s anyway. I made the analogy on the main pod actually that when we thought it was going to be a 2-horse race between Beaumont and Dunkley, it turned into musical chairs with Maya Bouchier sitting down at the end of it. But where they have got an opportunity is that number 7 spot, and no one as a batter really wants to come in that lower down the order. And Dunkley has already proved pre-2022, so before she was moved up to open, that she struggled in that number 7 spot when you need to go straight away. And Maya Bouchier has also said she doesn't like batting at 7, where she was batting before she kind of usurped Dunkley, for want of a better word. So even though they moved Dunkley back down to number 7 for a couple of games on that New Zealand tour, it kind of felt like that wasn't going to be a long-term solution to getting her into the side.
You were making a really interesting comparison earlier about how similar this England side looks to the England side that went to the last T20 World Cup in Bangladesh a whole decade ago.
Yeah, so the core of the batting unit, so the top 6, Amy Jones, Heather Knight and Nat Sivabrun were all in the same positions you would expect them to be batting now, coming up to 10 years later. 2014, that World Cup was in Bangladesh as well, so it does feel very kind of full circle. But the players who have then replaced the likes of Charlotte Edwards and Sarah Taylor and Lydia Greenaway, who were also in that top 6, you've got so obviously not anymore Tammy Beaumont, but Tammy Beaumont was in that side, and Danny Wyatt. And Sophia Dunkley her and Alice Capsey are kind of the only 2 younger players who've managed to cement themselves into that side. And now obviously Dunkley's having a bit of time out of the side. There's still questions over where it's best for Alice Capsey to bat, whether number 3 is the position that's going to be her home in the T20 side going forward. And now Maya Bouchier. And there's no one, like you said, in their late 20s, or no one who's managed to carry through an uninterrupted, or maybe uninterrupted is the wrong way of putting it, but largely uninterrupted run in the side from their mid-20s to their early 30s. And that could present problems down the road when you've got a core of players who are all 30, 31, 32, who are then going to suddenly disappear from the side, and suddenly those players who haven't managed to establish themselves are going to have to come through, or who have relied on the other players to be that core of batting. And we've seen it with England's batting collapses as well, that once Heather Knight, Nat Sciver-Brunt are kind of gone, they're always liable to collapse, and that's what we saw in New Zealand when they lost that T20. That experience gap can really be a problem for them.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting seeing how that batting lineup evolves, I guess, over the next few years. Another name to pick out, Lindsay Smith is included in the T20I squad. And she played in New Zealand, but that was the first time she played internationally in 5 years. Why has she made this comeback over other spinners on the domestic circuit?
So when she was called up for the New Zealand series, it felt a bit like, because we had so many players missing for the WPL for the first 3 matches of the series, and Lindsay Smith is a slow finger spinner, left arm finger spinner like Sophie Ecclestone. That kind of felt a natural replacement for Sophie Ecclestone for the first part of that series. Also, Lindsay Smith had a really impressive domestic summer last summer. She was joint leading wicket taker for the Vipers for their Charlotte Edwards Cup winning campaign, joint with Anya Shrubsole, third leading wicket taker overall in the competition, or joint second or something like that. So she had a really, really good summer, and then was called up to New Zealand and took a wicket with her first ball in international cricket in 3 and 4.5 years, something like that. But then to see her retained for this squad is kind of, it feels like a nod towards Bangladesh. So England have got these 3 amazing spinners in Sarah Glenn and Charlie Dean and Sophie Ecclestone. And it looks like they're going to go in with a 3-pronged spin attack. But if one of them goes down, or if they decide to chuck another spinner in the 11 and just go all out spinners, because we don't know what the pitches are going to be like in Bangladesh, because so little women's cricket is played, or international women's cricket is played in Bangladesh, that she's a good option to take on that tour. And I think you said before we started recording that in the last 3 years, no one apart from the big 3 have taken more than 3 wickets for England.
Exactly that. So no England spinner has more than 3 T20I wickets over the last 3 years than the big 3. So it feels like a very open race to be the backup. And I guess out of players who played for England recently-ish, Maddie Villiers was involved, but that's actually, it's 3 years since she last played for England. And looking through every domestic competition last year, Lindsay Smith was outstanding. So in domestic list A cricket, she's not gone above 4 runs and over a season since she was a teenager, and she's 29. She had an excellent 100. She went at just over a run a ball. In the Charlotte Edwards Cup that you mentioned, not only did she take loads of wickets, she went at 5s. She also had an excellent BBL in Australia as well. So she does feel like very much the form spinner in the country outside those 3.
Yeah, I know this is sport, but sometimes you do have to feel a bit sorry for the other spinners around the country, because this is just like, these 3 are just absolutely exceptional to have them all at the same time, and they're so young, all of them, that they could be around for absolutely ages.
100%. You know, you sort of forget how young even Ecclestone is because she's been around for so long, and also that they complement each other really well. Like, actually, it is amazing that England have 3 spinners that play pretty much every game who do completely different things. And with a World Cup in Bangladesh, it does, when we'll talk about that World Cup in Bangladesh more over the course of the summer, but it does feel, actually, given the talents that this specific England side has, that's a real opportunity, perhaps more so than other World Cups over the last few years. Something to watch over this Pakistan series as well is the battle for the second seamer in that side. So you'd think that Ecclestone, Glenn and Dean are locks as the spinners. Lauren Bell has played pretty much every game that she's been available for in the last year, and Nat Sciver-Brunt is obviously going to play, and her bowling is going to be important as well. Elsewhere, if you judged it on number of games played in the last year, Danny Gibson has played 12 out of 14 games since her debut, but you don't think that she's necessarily locked in for the 11 at the World Cup?
No, not necessarily. I think what was got to be taken into account is that if Freya Kemp has been injured since the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, on and off. She had that back fracture that she picked up in the West Indies at the end of 2022, and then has kind of been making her way back into international cricket. She bowled in the T20s in India later last year, but then had a flare up, as John Lewis described it, as that back fracture. Not a new back fracture, he was at pains to say, but a flare up of the existing injury in New Zealand. And she won't be available as a bowler over the summer, but I think they're hopeful she'll be able to bowl in T20s by the end of the summer. So that kind of puts her into contention for that all-rounder spot in Bangladesh. And I think what's kind of telling is that they trust Kemp enough, or they rate Kemp enough as a batter, rightly so, to include her as a batter in this series. Whereas if you look at Gibson's numbers with the bat over the last year or so, it's not been massively impressive.
7 feels high.
Yeah.
And that is where she's been batting a lot of the time for England.
Yeah.
And also what's really interesting is there'll be people listening think, reeling off seamers like Lauren Filer, Mahika Gore, Kate Cross, even Freya Davies. What England currently use the number 7 who also bowls seam for has been bowling at the death. So Gibson generally bowls 3 of her 4 overs in the second half of an innings. And Freya Kemp, when she was recently bowling, so she played in that tour of India over the winter, in the last game of the series, she bowled 4 overs and she did exactly the same as Gibson. She bowled 3 of her 4 overs in the second half of an inning. So that, maybe things change. Maybe Mahika Gore has an amazing summer where she takes loads and loads of wickets with a new ball and that forces England to change their plans. But at the moment, it's the batting. They want someone at 7 who also bowls at death. So it's a very, very hard role and you're asking quite a lot of a player, but that does feel like what they're looking for. And maybe a fully fit Freya Kemp is the person who fits that bill most.
Yeah, I think it is interesting because when you look at who they have bowled at the death over the last year, they've used spin quite a lot of the death. Sophie Ecclestone's bowled a lot of the death and they're quite flexible in the roles that they put those spinners in. So we've seen Charlie Dean open the bowling on a couple of occasions. We've also seen Siva Brunt bowl at the death. Lauren Bell also has experience bowling at the death. So it will be interesting to see if they persist with that kind of the all-rounder who bats at number 7 will bowl at the death. Equally, if you look at Lauren Filer adds another, you would never say Lauren Filer would bat at 7, but she adds another dimension with pace to the attack. But the way she was used in New Zealand was as that kind of middle overs enforcer bowler in the second T20 that she played. And they could switch things around so that Lauren Filer's in the side and they do it that way. But in terms of establishing those roles, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the summer and what that role develops into.
On Pakistan, what should we look out for from them?
A lot of spin. A lot of spin. So Sadia Iqbal, Nida Dar's had a really, really good couple of years and is really excited as a player. Obviously, they'll be without Bismar Maroof for this series. She's announced her retirement. That's massive. She's been such a servant to Pakistan cricket over the last decade, really. And that'll be a big, big loss, not just as a kind of cricketer, but as a kind of talisman for that side and as a role model. She's incredible and she'll be a really big miss for them. And going forward, they're going to have to redevelop over the next couple of years and really build into a side. It's a tricky one because England don't play much against Pakistan unless it's in a major tournament. So it will be kind of a new challenge, and speaking to a couple of the players about it, they don't really know kind of what to expect, especially on English pitches and how they're going to play out over the summer. But it's a kind of, I think it's quite a good side to play ahead of a World Cup because England spends so much of their time playing against Australia and playing against India and New Zealand, to be honest, but playing against someone, and South Africa, but playing against a different side is actually quite a good thing to do ahead of a World Cup.
100%. And just on Pakistan, so they just lost 4-1 against West Indies. They sort of got Hayley Matthews. But they did beat New Zealand in New Zealand at the end of last year. And as well as the spinners, Fatima Sana is one to watch. So she was the player of the series on that tour of New Zealand. And as you say, we don't really know how Pakistan will go in these conditions. And Fatima Sana is a seamer and she did very well there. So she's definitely a player to keep an eye on. And of the spinners, Sadia Iqbal is currently ranked 3rd in the T20I world rankings for her left arm spin. So she's another to keep an eye on. That is everything for today. Hope you enjoyed our first episode, and a reminder that we'll be hitting your feeds 2 days or so after each weekly episode, and a reminder that the Metro Bank Girls in Cricket Fund, in collaboration with the ECB, aims to triple the number of girls cricket teams by breaking down barriers and creating supportive and inclusive spaces. Help transform the game. Head to metrobankonline.co.uk/cricket to champion the future of girls cricket.